Folks, here we are. Here's the layout of the battlefield for our March attack battle I'm going to be playing this week. Pretty open terrain. There's a lot of height elevations, which I'll go into in a bit. But otherwise, the terrain isn't too substantial on the tabletop. And I do have some troops deployed, but I'll go into that separately. Let's take a look at the basic terrain features of the table. We do have some rough ground going on. This little field here with hedges. We got one there, and we've also got two fields down here. One there and one there, both surrounded by hedges. They count as rough ground in the game. They're going to slow you down, and they're also going to cause disorder, possibly, for troops charging in it. So it might play a role in the game if there's melees going on. I do have a couple buildings here that are currently on fire, and they're thus impossible to move through. That's a result of some previous fighting going on earlier in the day. The Russians now occupy the position. But again, we'll go into that later. We have a road cutting across here, which will have an effect on movement, of course. And there is hedges and even some stone walls going on down here. And of course, that'll provide cover, as you would imagine, and obstacles to cross. Other than that, it's all pretty much open ground, pretty open and clear. The exception, of course, is going to be these elevation points, and there's quite a few of them. Let's see if I could get a model's eye view of the elevation points I'm talking about here. As you can see from the French position, there's some substantial height elevations going on. Yeah. Now in the game, hills are rated for elevation from 1 to 3, 3 being the highest. In this game, there is one level 3 elevation, and it's right here in this area, right in there. Below it, these other hills, which run along here, this is basically a big crest line. You can see that right there, and it stretches down over here. That's basically a level 2 hill. Okay? Now, in between this area of level 3 and level 2s, we have a pretty open space, which includes the woods as well. And this area is actually level 1. It's like a little valley in here, as you can see. Down below here, we have another flat area, which is counted as level 0. And that's all down here. This is our flat ground, all the way over into this area. This is all level 0. And this stretches all the way around up into this zone here, which also is level 0. So that's the lowest point of the battlefield. And all this in here, down next to the burning building. So the only elevation points we're looking at here, again, is the level 2 ridge line, which cuts all the way across to here, up in this area. Right in here, it goes up to a level 3. Okay? This area here drops down to a level 1. This is our little valley. And there you go. Now what forests do, they're counted as level 1 in height. So they're going to add 1 to whatever elevation they're sitting on. So since this valley area is level 1, this woods area is considered level 2. Now that means it's about the same height as this ridge line. Now, don't get too thrown off by the height of my model trees, because I play 15 mil. They're a little bit larger than they should be for my 10 mils, as you can see. But that's not a problem with me at this point. I'm going to correct that in the future. Get some 10 millimeter trees. They're only slightly higher than they should be. So imagine this forest here, the same height as this ridge line. Okay? Now, this, remember, is a level 3. So if this anybody sitting here, like this hussar right here, he could see past this woods, okay? Because that's only level 2 in height. This is a level 3 area, so he can see over here. There is a dead space, which is equal to 1/2 the distance between the guy seeing and the obstruction, in this case the woods. So the dead zone is equal to 1/2 of this distance. So on the other side here, this distance here would be a dead zone. So he wouldn't be able to see over there. It's good to know. But otherwise, he could see all this stuff going on over here. So this is a major, important area of the battlefield, and I'll go into the objectives of the game when we get into it. So there you go, folks. This right here, of course, would be a level 1 forest sitting on a level 0 ground. So this is level 1. This ridge line, remember, is level 2, and they could see over this. And of course, there'll be a dead space. on the other side of the woods, as I explained here. But I don't want to overcomplicate it all. That's in general how the elevations work in the game, and we'll see if it has a major impact on the game. If you do know the rules, there's also a classification of hills in terms of their steepness. There's gentle and there is steep. Now, these hills are all considered gentle. There are a few spots that will be exceptions, and they'll be counted as steep, and they're pretty treacherous. They can disorder you, and not be good to fight a combat over there and charge up them. Like this area here is going to be considered steep, and there might be another spot. I think there's one right here, and a little area over here we have a steep spot. But that's about it. Everything else is gentle. I don't think that's going to play a big role in the game. So there you go, folks. That's the layout of the terrain, and in general, an idea of the battlefield. And I'm going to be fighting over today. So stay tuned, folks. The next up, I'm going to go into the armies, the deployments, and the objectives in this battle. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the objectives of the scenario. Now, first of all, you got to keep in mind that this is only a small part of an actual bigger battle involving tens of thousands of troops going on. This is a point of decision in this battle, and there's some particular objectives that the French are trying to capture, and the Russians are trying to secure. Now, what's happening here is we have 3 objectives, and I mark them on the tabletop with these little red markers, and I'll keep them on there for the video's sake. But basically what they represent is, this here is the heights, and I'll refer to them as the heights during this battle. And the French want to capture this position if they can, because it does in fact have a really good line of sight to other areas of the battlefield. So this is a distinct advantage on this large battlefield going on. Also, this part of the heights as well is an objective. If you control these points, you control the heights in this battlefield. Also, an objective down here is these 2 farm buildings, basically the farm area. Of course, again, the buildings are on fire, but it's still an objective point for this game. So there's basically 3 objectives. The heights, which are indicated with these 2 markers, and the farm area, which will be indicated with that marker down there in the middle between the buildings. Now, the battle's going to go about 4 hours, so we're talking about maybe 10 to 14 turns, and I'll fill you in as we get close to that point as to what's going to happen. But there is a time limit to this battle, and the French are trying to secure the majority of these objectives, in other words, 2 out of the 3. If they manage to secure all 3 and not break, they will win a decisive victory in this battle. If they manage to secure the majority of those objectives, 2 of the 3, they'll basically get a nice victory regardless. The same goes for the French. They will win a decisive victory if they can retain control of all 3 objectives, or have the majority of them and claim a normal victory. So that's how it goes. It's basically fighting for control of the heights and control of this area of the battlefield where the road is in the village. We'll call it the farmhouse objective. Currently, the Russians are in control of them, and the French basically have to wrest control from the Russians. Put a little context on this. We have Davout in command of this corps of French coming from the west side of the battlefield, and he's got about 5 divisions of troops coming in here to take this objective. Now, the Russians are pretty light when it comes to defending this area. They basically have, I think, about 4 divisions in all that they could call upon for the battle. Not all of them are on the table. Neither are the French, actually. I'm just putting them there to show the location where they start from. But they do have 4 battle groups of cavalry, which are basically 2 regiments broken up into smaller squadrons units. It's called battle groups in the rules of March Attack. So there's 4 of them, and they're located right here. They're already on the battlefield, and they're basically spotting out the heights at this moment, and they basically see the approach of the French. So they're going to get a jump on the French at this point. Down here, there was some fighting earlier in the battle. A division of Russians and a division of French infantry were going at it, and the Russians came out on top. They were pretty under strength and had to converge some of their battalions. There's 3 battalions down here, including some guns. Basically, they converged their troops together, and they're basically 3 battalions as opposed to, say, 4, 5, or 6 or so. So they're actually large-sized battalions at this point. And the French are coming back for some revenge, and they're over in this area here. And I'll talk about the forces in the next part of the video. But suffice it to say that the Russians are in control of the objectives currently. If they can hold on to those objectives for the battlefield's length, or the battle's length, which is about, I'd say, 10 to 14 turns, they will win. The French have to try and capture those objectives, or at least the majority of them, without breaking, to secure any kind of victory. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the forces themselves. Now we're going to take a look at the Russians and see what's going on. Now, not everything is on the table in turn 1, but I will describe what their forces are and if they are on the table. Now, for the Russians, the corps commander here is Tuchkov, and he's taken from the Battle of Borodino. He's not the best commander. He's pretty average, maybe a little bit slow getting his troops to do things, but that's about it. Anyway, in his force, he's got about 4 divisions of troops. And retaining control of the heights, and they're warning the Russians at this point of the advance of the French. The rest of that division of cavalry is made up of 2 regiments of cuirassiers, which I have over here. This is the Gukov regiment. So that's the cavalry division. Also, we have over here a division of five battalions of grenadiers. Now these aren't converged grenadiers. These are a little bit better trained grenadiers, and they also have some foot guns as well. And this division will not be moving on to the battlefield until turn 2, I believe. They're on their way, basically. The 3rd division that they have is located over here. This is a musketeer division, and they're not all deployed on the table either, but what is there will be able to move on to the board in turn 1. I believe there's 3 more battalions in this group right here, so altogether it's about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 battalions plus some foot guns. Yeah, and Tuchkov himself is down here. He's right there. That's his little command stand. So yeah, that's the 3rd division in the army, and they're moving up to reinforce this pretty much under-strength unit that's been engaged all day in fighting. This division up here is another musketeer division, sorry. And it's made up of 3 battalions, and plus they have some foot guns as well. So that's the Russian forces. Now, again, they have this unit, which will be able to take action in the first turn. This division will be moving on in the first turn. And all the way down here, we've got the cavalry division, which includes these cuirassiers, which will be moving in the first turn. The only thing that will not be moving for the Russians in the first turn is this division of grenadiers. They'll be coming on the board from this position here on turn 2. So they're moving in to kind of reinforce this heights area, or whatever they can decide to do to secure victory. So that's the Russians, folks. See if Tuchkov can save the day for the Russians. Now let's take a look at the French. One other thing I should point out for the Russians before I get into the French is that their cavalry division is commanded by Uvarov, and he also was in the Battle of Borodino. He's a pretty inspirational character. Actually makes a good cavalry commander. We'll see if he's effective in this battle. Not very well known for his command abilities, but he is inspiring. So we'll see how that plays out. And he's located right there, actually. I have him on the table. So he's going to be able to take action immediately. And again, where's that 4th? That 4th Hussar unit is right there. So you can see the deployment of the Russians is here on the heights. And they got these guys behind this woods out of sight. Okay, so let's take a look at the French and see what they're going to be up to. Folks, let's take a look at the French. Now, this corps is commanded by Davout himself. So he's got good command ability in the roles, but he's not very inspirational. we'll see what role that plays in the game. The French have 5 divisions in all, 4 of which are infantry. 1 is cavalry. Pretty standard divisional commanders, nothing special or bad about any of them outside of Davout himself. But anyway, we have this infantry division, which is made up of 4 line battalions and 2 light battalions, and they do have some medium foot guns. Next to them is the 2nd Division, which is exactly the same. It has 4 line battalions and 2 light battalions and some foot guns. Next to them is the Cavalry Division, made up of 3 Hussar and 1 Dragoon regiment. And unlike the Russians, the French have decided to keep their cavalry together, organized in regiments, not battle groups. So 2 bases per unit. Now down there on the end, and these troops are deployed on the table and will be taking action from the first turn. Let me zoom in a little bit so I can get an idea what's going on here. We have a division of Saxons. It's 3 battalions of infantry. They don't have very good skirmish ability, and half of them are conscripts, but we'll see how good they do in the battle. But they will be supporting this division over here of French infantry, which was engaged earlier in the day and is made up of 4 under-strength battalions of French line and 1 battalion of light infantry. They don't have cannon. In fact, they're the only division that does not have artillery support. All the rest of the French infantry have medium foot guns. So that's the French, and that's the Russians. And one more thing about the cannon is that everything is medium foot guns. There's not a whole lot of artillery in this battle. Pretty much most of it is engaged elsewhere in the battlefield, so there's no big dependency on artillery. I think the Russians might have a slight advantage in numbers of guns. Everything's medium foot guns, so we're talking about 6-8 pound guns here on both sides. Yeah, so that's the situation, folks. Once again, there's a look at the heights that's going to be fought over. Take a little close-up look here of the farm area that was fought over earlier today. You can see the understrength division of the Russians. They got a couple units in line formation, got their guns deployed, and there's a 3rd battalion back here in column. And somewhere in that mess is their divisional commander. So there they are, folks. So to recap, turn 1. Turn 1, all of the Russians will be able to take action except their division of grenadiers, which is right there. They will not be able to move on the board in the first turn. The first turn for the French, the only thing they're going to be able to move is these 2 units down here on the end, the Saxons and this understrength infantry unit. Starting on turn 2, they will be able to move on the board with their cavalry. And starting on turn 3, they'll be able to move on the board with their 2 infantry divisions right here. So you could see right away that the Russians, forewarned of the advance of Davout, are going to get a jump in terms of moving their troops. Again, they're going to be able to move all of their cavalry division on turn 1. All of this division down here on the flank, which has a lot of musketeer battalions. I think they said there was 7. But they're going to be moving on in the first turn to give support to this division up here that's holding the farmhouse area. Then starting on turn 2, they will be able to move on the board with their division of grenadiers. And we'll see what happens, folks. So that's the troops, that's the objectives, that's the layout, and next up is the actual battle. Let's see what happens.